We didn't say good morning to.
We're gonna get started here in a minute, just trying to give some folks to trickle on in and take a seat and bring all their snacks and food and all that good stuff and
Breakfast.
put the dogs up and I'll leave them out. Sometimes you get to see nice pets on the video, which is
Mm-hmm.
nice. So if you have
Hope,
any, do a show and tell. All right.
hope you all had a good weekend. So it was a little bit of sunshine going on where I live, so that was nice.
In Raleigh, we had a whole bunch of rain.
A little bit of sunshine on Saturday,
Yeah.
rain on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's according to my clock, 9:34, and we have again a full packed agenda today. So welcome to strategic planning, session 4. Counting today, 3 more to go. And our last one will be really fun. We have graduation, so that'll be an exciting event and day. But we'll talk about that on another day. So let's get going. Let's show you the agenda for today. As you can see, there are a lot of words on this screen, a lot of information. Strategic planning, again, Dr. Palmer will break this agenda down, but as usual, we'll go through it. We'll take breaks as needed. And making sure that's as frequent as, as we can possible without holding off too much of the information. Just as a reminder, as we go through this, please put your questions in the chat and we'll monitor them best possible. And at the end, we enjoyed our after party last time. So if anyone would like to stay on for a few minutes afterwards to ask any additional questions of Dr. Palmer or the group, please join us. And I'll remind you again at the end. So this is our agenda. I hope everyone has your thinking caps on, and I'm gonna just go to the next slide, please. And I believe that's what I'm handing it off to. Our first exercise. So what I'd like for you all to do is take a moment and hold on a second. Let me get my screen together here because Rebecca's having some internet issues, so I'm trying to get her to come back on here. As you see the screen in front of you, I want you to take a moment. This is going to be our icebreaker getting into our day today. So you're going to imagine you're alone in a dark cabin. All you have is one match. And all you have is one match. Which of the following would you light first? The oil lamp, a fireplace, or a candle? Okay. So I want you to be able, when you're in your groups, to reach consensus as a group and come back for a report. Everyone got that? Pretty simple. We're going to break out into groups. This is our first exercise. You have one match, dark cabins. Look how spooky it looks. And have a discussion. What you're going to light first? The oil camp, a fireplace, and a candle. And hopefully your group will come to a consensus. So Leslie, being that we don't have Rebecca, are you able to do our breakouts?
Yes, it should be popping up any second.
Great. We'll see you back in we'll give you maybe about 5 minutes, I think. You think that's good, Dr. Palmer?
It's 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, this is Rebecca's part. Thought she'd been back on by now. That's this. And Dr. Palmer, I think you take over for the feedback, correct, once they get back? Well, no one got lost. Hope you had good conversation. Give you a couple more minutes as some rooms are closing out. All right, I think we have everyone in, I believe. Is this all rooms closed, Leslie?
Almost. Give it like 20 more seconds.
Okay. Good. Hope you all have chosen a spokesperson. that can give us some feedback that Dr. Palmer will go through and ask you some questions about this good old looking spooky cabin. And remembering, for those of you, I know some folks came in late. Well, what the group was deciding, they only have one match. And they have to decide, what are they gonna light first, the oil lamp, the fireplace, or the candle? Because obviously they need some light. All right. So let's get some, Dr. Palmer, I'm gonna hand it over to you so we can get some report back on group consensus on which they would like first, and hearing a little bit about the process. And then how does this relate to the topic of strategic planning?
Okay.
So how many groups did we have? Leslie?
We had 4 groups.
Okay,
Okay, so what your task was in this exercise was for you to identify what you would like first, an oil lamp, a fireplace, the fireplace, or a candle. And the idea is that you only have one match, and you want to create some light. And so give me an idea. If we could go back to the gallery for just a minute, I kind of like to see everybody. And good morning again. Good morning. Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Am I good? Clear? Okay, great. Let me know if that's not the case. So hopefully there was a little bit of opportunity to get to know each other, if for nothing else, by way of what you would have chosen. And so before we get into actually what you selected, how did your discussion begin? How did you start the discussion? And you can unmute yourself from your group. You want to. Thank you, Bethany, for letting us know that. Thank you.
Well, we started our group because I started blabbing first, so I probably should have done it in a better order. I just spoke up and gave my opinion, and then everyone started following. We had a great discussion, a lot of bright minds.
Good. Thank you, Carolyn. Any other group? How did you get going? We didn't give you instructions on how to start this or how to get the dialogue going, but John, I think I saw you unmute yourself.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. What we did is we got started and I opened it up with who wants to start with a recommendation and a reason why they're choosing that item. And that's how we got started.
Okay, thank you so much. Next group, do you want to share? We got 2 more
In our
groups to
group-
go.
Yeah, in our group, we just started sharing the first thing that popped to mind when we heard the exercise, and we started sharing, and then we started questioning our own first reactions, and that's how it kicked off.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for sharing. And one more group. How did you all?
That's pretty much the same. This is Terry Pinkney. We started with one person making a suggestion about what they were thinking, and then everybody started popping in. Well, I was thinking this or I was thinking that, and then why they were thinking it.
Okay, all
And we
right. So
didn't
a little
stop
bit.
anybody from thinking anything. Everyone was just able to say what their thoughts were and why they thought about that.
Great, 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 great. So seemingly lots of shared, lots of opportunity to share, open space to share, kind of dialogue and listening to what each of you kind of had to say. As a group, Carolyn, which did you all choose?
We chose the candle.
Okay. And John, what did you all choose?
We chose the match.
Okay. And Maria, what did you all choose?
Chose the candle.
And Terry, what did you all choose?
Well, I want my group to confirm this, but we chose the oil lamp.
Okay. All right. Was there any particular reason, Carolyn, that you all chose the candle If you had to name one primary reason.
I think it's because it's gonna be easier to light a candle with a match because we weren't sure if the oil lamp had oil in it. And we knew that we wouldn't be able to start the fireplace. So we thought that would be the easiest and least risk, I guess, is to light the candle first.
All right, thank you. And John.
Yes, ma'am. We thought a little bit out of the box, and Nancy was like, hey, we got to have the match lit first. You can't light anything else until you light the match. So what are you lighting first? The match.
Okay.
And if we had to choose a second item, if that's a requirement for this exercise, we would choose the oil lamp.
Okay, so match first, oil lamp. I think I saw something in the chat before I go to Maria. I think I saw there's a group, someone responding to their group. I don't want to
Okay.
miss that.
Yes, yes, I'll speak up about that because that's my group. So that's why I said if the group agrees with this, but so I'll retract. We chose the match
Okay,
as
okay,
the first item to light, and then the oil lamp. So we switched it at the
Was
end.
there
I'm sure there was
any
consensus about that, but I
Yeah.
suppose there was, if the group agrees.
any particular reasoning, any particular reasoning why you all went that route, Terry?
Yes, because one of our group members, Kenton, also had the same idea that the first thing that you have to light is the match. And so at the end of discussion, thought the match that was not a given. And so added that as what to light first. And the
All right,
group.
thank you. Maria, why did you all choose the candle first? If we had
Well,
to,
We thought that the fireplace and with the fireplace and the oil lamp, there were too many unknowns, like there was oil in the oil lamp, the difficulty to light the fireplace and stay lit. We thought that going with the candle, it being careful, we could use it to light all the others and it will stay lit longer.
oh, okay, okay. So, one of the things that, excuse me. Oh, so, okay, Rebecca, I see. Did you want to share something or you just? Okay.
No.
All right, okay. So in thinking about this exercise, we wanted us to, well, first of all, we wanted you to go in breakouts and kind of have that opportunity at the onset of our time together today. And hopefully you were able to be reminded of who you are in terms of introductions, but also do a little bit of introducing yourselves to each other as it is. But we also wanted to kind of illuminate goal setting and prioritizing and making a decision together in terms of a way forward that would impact the group or impact what it was that you were trying to do, which was to bring light in a dark cabin. And so in thinking about that and thinking about strategic planning, prioritizing, having discussion, deciding on what direction to take is a very important part of that process. The process is what it is. There's about 8 to 10 steps in strategic planning or to walk a nonprofit through the strategic planning process, but it takes individuals, it takes people to do that. It takes the staff, the executive director, in some cases, volunteers, definitely the board. And then also in some cases, we have partners and organizations and people that we collaborate with that we include in that process. And it is about having conversation and discussion and bringing different perspectives to the table about what it is we want to do over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever the time frame is that you decide that you want your strategic plan to cover. So, so in thinking about this particular exercise, team, if we could go back to slide 5. And I just want us to just take a look, back one more, there we go. I just want us to take a look at the touch points that we're going to lean in on today as it relates to strategic planning. You have quite a bit of material in your workbook, and I'm going to break that down for us here in just a minute. But there are several items here that are relevant to engaging in strategic planning. One of the things that we encourage organizations to do is to prepare to plan. And sometimes we jump right into the strategic planning process without really thinking about all the moving parts, who needs to be involved, and just really getting teed up for that experience. Oftentimes, a strategic planning process runs from about 6 months to 12 months to actually create a plan. And so there is this need to kind of get warmed up or started up, and then also preparing a plan. There's an element of the process related to understanding needs. There's also a part of the process that we encourage organizations to engage in identifying assets, to spend some time focusing on capacity and the capacity of the organization, taking a look at the mission and vision, possibly doing some goal setting, of course, is very important in the process. And then also, some of you may be familiar with walking your organization through or thinking about what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what barriers or threats are there to being able to implement a plan once you have it developed. And so that's an important part of the process. Then we write the plan, we implement the plan, we monitor and track progress, and then we evaluate and we revise or we revisit the plan to determine what the plan should look like or what the process should look like for the next strategic plan. So we're going to walk through each of these components today. There's some hands-on work that we're going to do related to strategic planning. As usual, if you have questions, you can share those questions in the chat. We'll be paying attention to that. And also, you can very well unmute yourself or use the reaction, raise your hand, and we'll try to get your questions answered as we go along. So we're gonna move forward in talking about and learning about strategic planning. We did have 2 individuals who said that they would volunteer today to just give us a real high level kind of overview of their plan. So Kenton Spence with the DataWorks of North Carolina and Janelle Goodrich of University City Partners. If you all could kind of get your plans kind of ready to share. And I want to incorporate that in our work to get started today. If we could go back to the gallery, that would be great. So I do want to pose a question before we hear from Kenton and Janelle. How many of you, your strategic plans are available on your website if you have one? So just, you can use the reaction, a thumbs up, or if you want to, how many of you have a strategic plan and that strategic plan is available on your website? I just want to get a sense of that. Okay. Just trying to get a sense. Okay. All right. Okay. 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 Lisa, I see quite a few. I know it's like popcorn
Yeah.
when we start posting in the chat. Um,
Looks like
looks
about
like,
half and half yeses, nos.
mm-hmm.
Some have.
Okay, some aspect of it is on the website. Okay. You know, it is a good way to promote and communicate to folks who are curious about your organization, and also to those folks who want to keep up, you know, with what it is that you're doing, to have your strategic plan on your site outright. And or as someone mentioned here, you may highlight some elements of the plan. Maybe you highlight the goals, or, you know, maybe you highlight, you know, what it is you're hoping to accomplish in the next couple of years, or however long your plan is. So that's good to know. The next question I have is, and I don't know who wants to go first, Janelle or Kenton, just let me know. But the next question I have for us though is, how many of you have participated in a strategic planning process with a nonprofit? How many of you have participated in a strategic plan? I see hands. Ivan, I see your hand is up. I see Alex, and I see Jennifer. Okay. All right. Great. Um, and okay, good. Lots of us have participated in the strategic planning process. Well, we have quite a bit of material to share with you today as it relates to strategic planning. But to kick us off, we want to kind of hear just about a 3-minute kind of overview from Janelle and Kenton. Who would like to go first to
And-
just kind of
And if it's easier for either of you to share your screen, let us know, then we can stop sharing, but let us know what you prefer.
Mhm.
Whoever's gonna go first. Looks like Kenton.
Yeah, so it's 3 minutes, so I have to switch mine up a little bit because mine's a little longer than that.
Okay.
Yeah, mine was actually set at a 10-minute or less, but
Do
yeah.
you wanna
Can you do it? Can you do it in 5?
Yeah, I can race through it. I'll be more
All
than
right.
happy to
Well,
race through it.
if you could kind of hone in on your format, kind of what what you've identified as the salient areas, and then the process that you use, like how you approached it.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, that's, you know what, let me just do it and I'll just go through and I'll
And do
put
you
a
wanna
5-minute
share-
timer on it. Yeah, I just need to share the screen.
Okay, Leslie.
Okay.
you-
All right.
And
Thank you.
And they share the audio too.
Okay. Thank you, Kenton.
All right, so I'll go ahead and I'll start.
Leslie, you're good to stop sharing, right? And let us know when.
So I'm not sharing right now, so.
Okay, good. You're good, Kenton.
Okay.
The right data can kickstart your decision-making process, just like a cup of coffee can kickstart your day. But using data incorrectly can lead to poor outcomes like pouring coffee on your pancakes. Not exactly what you had in mind. At DataWorks NC, we take the pain out of data analytics. We help you find the right information and the right solution by democratizing data. No hidden brokers or broken silos. We believe that information should be accessible to everyone with a stake in the community. We seek out the whys to find the why nots, to create sustainable models that give the power of information back to you. Our vision is to build empowered, productive, and equitable communities where everyone is seen and heard, where all children can dream and their futures can become reality. Instead of sifting through mounds of data, your valuable energy is directed towards achieving this vision. We empower you to make informed decisions so you can focus on turning your great ideas into reality. Partner with us today to create your future. DataWorks NC. We make data work for you.
Hi, so my name's Ken Spencer. I'm the Executive Director for DataWorks North Carolina. And so this is our very brief strategic plan. And so basically what it is, so we look at what is our vision for DataWorks over the next 3 to 5 years. And what we basically use was a Roger Martin's approach in regards to strategic planning, where we look at what is our winning aspiration, which is our core mission and values, which is to become North Carolina's premier independent data service providers for nonprofits and local governments. Our role is to promote equity, social justice, and self-empowerment of historically marginalized communities. And by making information accessible to those affected stakeholders to increase their capacity for change in their communities. So one of the things is that we look at what are our opportunities for growth. And so basically, how do we win in what we're trying to seek and do? So we look at the intersectionality between housing, health, criminal justice, and economic inequality. And so we partners with local HBCUs, nonprofits, and local governments. We create scalable models. And we also look at closing the skills gap between local communities. So just like with a plane, we look at core operations, what are things that are needed in order to fulfill this vision and mission and to make it scalable. So these are what we call must-have capabilities, MHCs. We look at the people, having the right people with the right skills at the right time. We also look at funding stream in order to fuel the tools to get us to where we need to be. We look at also creating the programs are in alignment with our mission and our vision. And a key thing is that also marketing and developing those type of programs. So to do that, we did basically a SWOT analysis where we look at our strengths. And one of the things is that we have a strong brand reputation in the local community. We have key partnerships with local governments and nonprofit, as well as community associations. And we provide a quality product and support services in the end users that they need. We also have a strong culture of collaboration. Some of the weaknesses and challenges they have is that outside our local community, we do not have a strong brand recognition. We also have limited staff capacity at the moment in order to scale up. We also have a narrow funding stream where 2/3 of our funding comes from grants and only 1/3 from government contracts. And consequently, we also have a small community donor base. However, the opportunities is that we are the only data intermediary operating on the community level in North Carolina. And many counties and municipalities do not have data tools such as a quality data index or a compass. Also, marginalized communities across the regions also have unmet needs for data services. Some of the external threats are basically the federal statute eliminating tax credits. So therefore, this pressing down on charitable giving, reducing it. We also have a high inflation, a weakening economy, which is also causing downward pressure. And then we have presidential election season, which is also producing donor fatigue. Going into later into the year. So taking all those things together, we are then looking at how do we ensure the stability and sustainability of the organization over the next 3 to 5 years. So these are our actions and goals. So the thing is to build systems because we talk about systems. So one of them is to create enabling management systems to allow us to do that. One is to create effective people management systems. So we would develop and implement personalized training goals for team members to increase skills and functional capacity in the organization by the fourth quarter of our fiscal year from 23 to 24. Our fiscal year runs from July to June. So we run basically a program fiscal year is similar or the same as the state. We also would institute quarterly reviews of team members beginning end of the fourth quarter of fiscal year 23-24 to give individuals actionable feedback and opportunity for growth. We also would strengthen effective data management systems. So basically, we would implement a quarterly review process of our data management system beginning the fourth quarter of 23-24 to ensure data integrity and cost efficiency. We also then look at our fiscal controls. So one of the things we would do is develop and implement a marketing plan beginning the first quarter of fiscal year 24-25 to increase our capacity and diversify our funding stream. We also implement a CRM program in the fourth quarter fiscal year 23-24 to maximize donor relationships and manage fundraising campaigns. And then we would develop and launch a communication marketing internship program beginning May 1st of this year of 2024 to increase brand awareness. The next system we'll be looking at is community outreach programs. We would expand and deepen our relationship with community leaders of BIPOC communities to raise awareness of our services by increasing points of contact beginning immediately in the fourth quarter of our fiscal year of 23-24. We will also launch by May 1st a campaign to systematically develop relationships with local government stakeholders in cities and counties where marginalized communities exist. Then the other last system would be a partner collaboration mechanism. But again, we implement collaborating matrix by the fourth quarter to identify partners and projects aligned with our core mission and values. So based upon these things, as we implement, we integrate our where we play, how do we play, and what are our key capabilities, and then we integrate that into our enabling management systems, which allow us to grow not only in Durham, but in neighboring counties and cities such as Greensboro and Fayetteville. Dan, I think I just hit 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Is the digital, what type of digital or electronic platform did you all use to be able to have that digital presentation or that electronic presentation?
Well, our PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah, that was PowerPoint. But the video, that was at the beginning, that was created. I did that using video editing software and basically some stock footage and so forth, and then also audio editing. So that was about a 2-day process for a 1-minute video, and then plus a voiceover. So
Lisa, do you want to share some of the comments in the chat? Kenton, some of your colleagues are I think you have a very impressive presentation. That was great. Thank you so much.
yeah, I
Okay,
hope I didn't
Lisa.
speak too fast. So I was trying to
No,
race through it.
you were perfect. You were absolutely perfect. Yeah.
Good. Everybody's giving him compliments, thumbs up, lots of love.
Thank you. Very gracious. So.
Yes, thank you. And Janelle is going to share her presentation.
All right, I'm gonna grab my screen.
Okay.
All right. We are, let me get into the right spot here. Here we go. Ours, we call it a vision plan, which is more or less our strategic plan. And this is an executive summary that we have on our website. And we start off right away with our vision is for Charlotte's University City to be a vibrant place that is urban in scale and design. It will be energized by transit and will be a popular, accessible destination offering diverse and unique choices for living, shopping, working, learning, and leisure. It will become a premier employment center in the region with sophisticated infrastructure and attractive amenities. So that is our aspiration, our vision. And from there, we break it down like, okay, how do we go about doing this? So we started out with a lot of interviews. We had a whole bunch of one-on-one sessions with our stakeholders and our large employers, and we brought together 3 focus groups with employees and residents. UNC Charlotte is the university that's adjacent to our MSD, and we
Janelle,
Yes.
Janelle, we don't think we are seeing what you're seeing. There's something different on the screen. It says research and plans. Can you see?
Okay. Let
We
me
don't see it. Yeah.
let me go back and
Probably
try
have to, you
stop and
probably have to,
restart.
yeah, that's probably what you need to do. thank you. Someone put that
No
in the chat.
problem. I'm just gonna breeze through it.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay, can you see it now connecting?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yay!
Thank you. Uh-huh.
Okay, so this is our executive summary that we have on the website. We actually have a much longer one. So this was probably about 8 months of work that we pounded through. And like I said, we started out with even one-on-one interviews, and we had focus groups that we pulled together from CEOs to a retiree, all coming together to talk about this community in a way that we can reach our aspirational goals of making it a place where everybody wants to be and live and work and play. So that's how we kind of started to dive into it. And like I said, we had all these initial interviews. We worked heavily with UNC Charlotte. They have great departments within the university. I highly recommend, if you can, tap into your local university or community college. They are an immense support structure for things like this, I have found. And many of them are eager to take on some of these challenges. Interns, we use quite a bit, as well as, like I said, department heads will chime in and support us on these kind of things. So we go through, and we had other area plans that we had worked on, because we're an organization that has been around 20 years. So we pulled together our old area plans for university city area, and we went back through a lot of these and tried to look at how we could update these. And then you gather all this information. Okay, we've got, in our case, transportation issues. We've got, infrastructure issues. We've got trying to attract the right amenities, and you start putting these in different buckets of vision themes and how we can go about coming up with a comprehensive plan that we can set our targeted goals of reaching some of these by 2040. So we start mapping those out, and how everything will flow, and what we're looking for. What is our center? What is our town center? Because we are more or less a suburb of Charlotte. So how do we create some energy around a central location? So you'll see just quite a bit of information on how we started to break it down and dissect how you eat that elephant, one bite at a time. So so you can page through a lot of this if you like, and you can see that we have just tried to go through as thoroughly as possible. And then we created our to-do list. Each year, we start targeting what we need to accomplish and how we can keep going to that plan. And I'm sure I've gone over as well, but I hope that's of some help.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I did put a link in the chat to this section of our website where you can feel free to look at it and ask me any questions that you have.
Awesome. So there are, as you can see, there are different ways that you can build a strategic plan or create a strategic plan. What I will say is that the steps to get to each of those examples are similar. There are about 8 to 10 steps that we facilitate or that we coordinate to get a nonprofit organization to the end result of what you saw with Kenton. Thank you again. And with Janelle, thank you again, both of you, for volunteering to be a part of sharing today. Greatly appreciate that. Kenton, for you, and Janelle, for you, what was the cost for you all, like dollar amount cost, for you to get to that end result?
When you say costs, because there's different levels of cost. So you're talking about cost to the organization or cost to
Yes.
me?
The dollar amount that you
To the
had
organization?
to
Yeah, free for them.
Okay.
Because I did everything in-house. So, and that's and actually technically, I did this presentation as part of my interview for executive director. So
Okay.
I was even on the payroll, so there's not even a employee cost, so they made out, so.
And that is how it happens in some cases for some nonprofits. Some nonprofits have internal resources, internal know-how, internal skills, and they can tap into either staff or volunteers or board members, and they can achieve the end result, which is to have a strategic plan. Janelle, what was the cost for you all?
I believe we spent about $50,000 on this because we did hire an outside consultant to pull this all together. There was a lot of mapping that had to be that we asked of them, as well as renderings of what, visionary looks at a town if you could put these type of buildings and structures in place. So it was, it was something that, costs a little bit of money.
Mhm. Yes, but again, thank you both for presenting those are two great examples, and even more so, two really good examples on how you might go about funding and actually having the strategic plan created and developed. We're going to walk through those salient steps to get us to help us to understand the steps that it takes. And then it's up to each nonprofit organization to decide how you're going to pool those resources, be it people, be it skills, how you're going to bring all that together. The nonprofit that I started from my kitchen table, the first strategic plan we did was a Microsoft Word document. So, it depends on what resources you have available to you. We had the skills in terms of we knew how to facilitate the process. We knew what the steps were and all of that. So that part we did as a board and with the volunteer executive director at that time. But the document ended up being a Word document. It was probably about 15 pages or so. It had the goals, the actions, it had all the information that it needed. It had a couple of words that were in color, that kind of thing, but it served the same purpose. So you have to kind of gauge what resources you have to determine how you might be able to pull this together. I want to pause just for any general comments about what you just saw and what you just heard. And then I want to do one piece of work and then we're going to go into a break. And there are some comments in the chat of folks kind of responding, and just kind of speaking out about what it is that how folks have gone about doing this. Are there any the chat is kind of rolling. So if you had a question in the chat, can you go ahead and lift that up if you want to, or if you just have any general comments? No questions?
I have a question, Dr. Palmer.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious for the folks who presented, were these done post-COVID? Or were they done before COVID strategic plans? And how, I think this is maybe just a general sort of thing of how folks are sort of navigating, right? That we live in such an uncertain world in so many ways. And so balancing, like what do those kind of checkpoints looking like for you all? I would imagine for the university partners ones, there's there's federal or not federal, local dollars that are invested into that. And so as those budgets get like all of those sorts of things, because we can spend a lot of time and energy on these, but if we're not sort of creating the opportunities that we can kind of course correct along the way, and think about those current environments. I'm just curious about how folks are kind of navigating that.
Well, Ivan, we started ours at the beginning of COVID. We had planned to start it. 2019, we had come up with the plan and we hit the ground running in March
Oh, wow.
of 2020. So, we got to know Teams, Microsoft Teams very well. So the vast majority of this was done just like we're doing right now. And so it was an interesting challenge, but in a way, because we lost so many of our other distractions, because things were shut down. To be able to have that straight on focus on that really probably helped us move along quicker. And having people that were, stuck at home that, it was easier for them to, well, I have nothing else to do. I might as well join this group and see what's going on. So kind of in a way, it was a silver lining for us.
Yeah, yeah, our approach is post-COVID, so yes, in the transitioning there, the organization has faced a lot of the stressors from post-COVID, especially with transitioning of team members that are moving to other opportunities, particularly in the private sector. So this was an opportunity to then basically respond to the post-COVID scenario. So, but going to your point, the critical thing is just like with anything, just like a business plan, strategic plan, it can't be set in stone. So that's why I prefer Roger Martin's approach, that it's a much more dynamic process where you built in reviews, usually with an annual review of your strategic plan, ensuring that, again, it's alignment with your mission and values, but it's being responsive to and adapting to the current environment that you exist. Prior to coming to the nonprofit, I've been in the corporate sector for many, many years, and in the healthcare sector. And one of the frustrating part was that they would create these strategic plans, and by the time they launch them, 2-3 years later, the business environment has completely changed. Federal funding has changed, statutes change. I mean, especially in healthcare, which is still one of the heaviest regulated fields, industries, you can't keep up. And so what you find is that the traditional way of doing strategic plans, in my honest opinion, doesn't work as well as it should be. It needs to be much more adaptive and much be more dynamic and fluid. So I tend to approach it from a Roger Martin perspective, but there's a lot of different other perspectives that are just as valid. It has to be, but it has to work for you. That's why it's not a one size fits all. So what works for Janelle and is adaptive, and how we work, it has to work with also your processes stuff. But one of the key things is that you got to build in a review that when you look back and look forward and say, like, okay, is what we're thinking about 3 years ago, is it relevant now? And not be afraid to think out of the box.
How many were on Janelle and Kenton, how many were on your focus group when y'all originally started? And did you do some kind of presentation of the vision to get the people on the focus group that you need for it to help you support the vision?
Well, we were lucky. We already had quite a database of people in the community that were always willing to give their opinions. So very lucky that way. So our focus groups could be anywhere we can't try to keep them fairly small because you don't want too many in a group where people don't feel like they contribute. So 8 to 12 was our maximum, and it's where we like to stay. I think I've answered your question.
And we're going to do a deeper dive into the how to get to that deliverable. Kenton, I don't know if you were trying to respond to that or not. Okay. We're going to do a deeper dive into all of the different parts and pieces of this process. But what I want to do before we take our break, I want to turn your attention to the workbook. You have quite a bit of material, and so I'm going to ask if we're multitasking right now, if you could just pause on the multitasking, because I'm going to walk you through all of the pieces of information that you have, and we are going to go ahead and separate that information. So I don't know if you have Post-its. I don't know if you have paper clips. I don't know if you have, we probably have about, we have several different kind of sections in this material that you have. So what I'm going to do before the break is go ahead and have you kind of mark these sections so that when we come back, we're going to jump right into our work for the day. So if you have your workbook handy, if you could go ahead and grab that. So group, if you could put up slide 12, and we've got this slide for you to, as I'm talking, you can actually see what I'm kind of saying in terms of breaking up the information or grouping the information. So just want you to know what you have at your disposal. And I will wait for the slide. Great, awesome. So remember, this is the list that we showed at the very top of our time together. Lisa shared this with you first. I went back to it a second time, and here we are again, looking at it again, because you have a wealth of information at your disposal here. So pages 57 through 62 is what we identify as being the startup information that you have. So pages 57 through 62. So I want to make sure you mark that. Preparing to plan is our next group of information that you have, and that is pages 63 through 67. So you've got that there for you. And then the next part or piece of information you have is the needs assessment, pages 68 through 81, 68 through 81. So you can go ahead and mark that. And then the asset mapping is 82 and 83. So you've got that there. And then page 84 is related to capacity assessment and capacity building. We've already taken a look at this particular piece of information when we were oriented to assessing our capacity across the center's 12 principles and the 6 principles and practices that this institute is designed around. Mission, page 85, vision, page 86. Goal setting and objectives, pages 87 through 92. I'm going to slow up here just to kind of get you kind of there with that information. The SWOT information, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, pages 93 to 95. Writing the plan, page 96 and 97. Implementing the plan, page 98, monitoring and tracking progress, page 99, and evaluation and revision, page 100. Now, as we look at this list, the blue highlights, remember we did a capacity assessment, each of you did, and then we brought that information together and we looked at the results and findings of our capacity as a cohort. What you see highlighted in blue were the areas that the majority of us in the cohort identified as being areas that we wanted to work on over the next year, or that we wanted to focus on. And so we've highlighted those as being focal points and emphasis for today. And that's just based on your feedback in terms of what you shared with us. If you want to take a picture of this, you can. Because you might want to refer back to it in terms of the page numbers. But I'm going to walk us through from startup to evaluation and revision. And then we're gonna get into the how of how Kenton and Janelle made it to the finish line, if you will, by being able to have an actual plan in hand. This should have been, for most of you that put in the chat, that you have a plan already, or that you've participated in a strategic planning process. These are typically the steps. We have a couple of things here that we've added that might be a little unique and different than some of the processes that you all have participated in. But this is our work for today. And we're going to jump right in here once we take a break. The time is 10, and team, we can go back to gallery. The time is 10:37. So we're gonna come back at 10:45. When we come back at 10:45, does that sound good? All right, we'll see you back shortly in under a minute. And just want us to kind of get settled in here. We've got quite a bit of material that we are going to work through. And so our first kind of focal point or touch point is the startup phase of the process. So kind of getting started, beginning to think about how you want to approach having a strategic plan developed for your organization. As you noticed with Kenton and Janelle, two different looks, two different presentations, resources that they utilized and what it cost them to actually be able to complete the task was different. And so I kind of encourage you as we go through this kind of thinking about how to approach this, think about your own capacity, think about what resources you have at your disposal, and also about readiness to engage in a strategic planning process. And so I think all of those are things that we definitely need to think about. I'm going to be referencing the information in your workbook. And so we shared the pages of 57 through 62 as the information related to startup. In terms of kind of defining this whole notion of strategic planning, again, it varies from nonprofit to nonprofit in terms of how you approach this. It is a process. It's a process in terms of developing the plan, but it's also a process as it relates to strategic thinking and just kind of thinking about what it is that you want for the future of your organization that you want to document in maybe a 1, 2, 3-year plan. We don't see plans that much anymore beyond 3 years. Most of the time, plans are about 3. That's not to say your plan can't be longer, but that's typically what we see. And what we also, really, strategic planning has always been, and having a plan, the intent has always been, at least from a consultative facilitating the process perspective, that this is a document that can be modified and that it can be adjusted as needed. I think that became more real to nonprofit organizations during COVID, because a lot of times strategic plans are developed and we don't operationalize them. It's information on a page or ink on a page if a person or persons don't pick it up and actually use it. That's the operationalization of the plan. And so that's important to keep in mind as it relates to strategic planning in terms of how we define it and what it is. And then again, when you look at page 58, what we did here is we shared this little quick kind of introspective tool here in terms of thinking about, is strategic planning, what is it? And what's truth or myth? And I kind of highlighted some of those things in my intro just now in terms of the plan itself is the information that we use to do and guide us in implementing the plan. But the plan just written or compiled doesn't operationalize. There's nothing magic that's going to happen if we don't actually pick the plan up and use it. And so that's important to keep in mind. And that it isn't a substitute for us leading as board members and as the ED or CEO or staff. It's not a substitute for that either, because as we learned during COVID, you may very well have to pivot. You may very well have to change. You may very well have to make some adjustments. And so it is a process. And it is a way for us to guide our work. It also helps us to be on the same page. as it relates to what it is that we want to do for the future. In particular, it helps the executive director, CEO, and staff to have some kind of everyday reference point in terms of what it is that they're doing. And then it also helps the board kind of have an idea of what's happening day to day, because we're all working towards the goal. So this worksheet you can use, in terms of kind of getting your folks ready to engage in strategic planning, to dispel any myths as it relates to what strategic planning can accomplish for us. So that's what that is. And then on page 59, what we have here is some of what is indicative of what Janelle and Kenton were talking about in terms of, I asked the question, how much does it cost? Strategic planning is very educational because you're bringing folks together and you're working together and you're learning more about the experience or learning more about the nonprofit, I should say. It's engaging, it's participatory, it's hands-on. It is not probably the best utilization of this process if we're not including folks in it and listening and gaining insight from key stakeholders. So that's a part of it. And it is an important task. But what I will also say is that think about and consider whether your organization is ready to engage in this process. So that's page 59 there. And then page 60, in terms of the process, the slide that we showed is the process expanded. What you see here is the process, and this is what you would typically see. So for those of you who are thinking you want to have a consultant facilitate this process for you, this is the general process used regardless of how you go about doing it. It's going to look different depending on your organization, and we're going to get into the details in that. Startup. We're in startup. Think about putting together a strategic planning committee, page 61. Think about putting together a strategic planning committee. Typically, the board of directors, if not the board chair, but definitely a member of the board, chairs the strategic planning committee. And the strategic planning committee has both board members and staff. It's not uncommon for nonprofits to invite some of the other entities that are listed here in developing your committee. It just depends on what composition you want. And in some cases, it might even be based on where you're getting your resources from as to who might be involved on this strategic planning committee. So it could be representatives from some of your funding entities. It could be folks that are actually participating in your programs. It could be any combination of individuals. Now, you don't want a huge group, so you want a small group in terms of the committee, because this is a work group. So this group is helping, depending upon what you choose to do, this particular group is point, the group where you're referencing and you're keeping them involved in this process. Jenny, I see your hand.
I am just, thank you. I'm wondering what you would define as a good number for a group of strategic planning committee.
I'm always very careful not to be prescriptive because every nonprofit is different and there are variables that may be relevant to a particular nonprofit, and they may have 12. And then it may be that we're small grassroots and we might have 3. And so when you're thinking about your strategic planning committee, you really want individuals on the committee who understand your organization, They have a good sense of what your organization's mission and purpose is. They have a sense of where you want to go. They may not have the details, and they are in support of what your organization does. There's no magic number of individuals. I can remember working with a group, it was a startup. The volunteer executive director was the founder, and that person spent time building out a draft of a plan and then presented it to her 3 board members. So the composition is going to be based on maybe where you are in your life cycle, what it is, your community, and might even be based on the resources that you're bringing in, be it dollars or another type of resource is going to contribute to that. There's no magic number, I would say, but you definitely want, if you have a board and if you have staff, minimally, you want representation on that committee from that. Does that help?
It is. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm missing any other questions at this point. All right, so there's the committee. Whenever I work with nonprofits facilitating the strategic planning process, the strategic planning committee is essential. It's just essential. And especially if you're utilizing a consultant who is not in your organization, working within your organization each and every day. You may have a board member that has the skill set of facilitating a strategic planning process, and they may do it. I don't know, but and remember, Kenton shared that he actually developed that plan as a part of his interview. So that was a one person, I think, Kenton initially anyway, that developed his plan. So, and then you can get folks to chime in. So there are different ways that you can go about doing that. Here's one of my favorite pieces of information related to strategic planning in the startup. It's page 62, which is what we've really been talking about and why we asked a couple of volunteers to share their plan at the beginning of this topic, because there are a lot of different ways that you can go about doing this. And so what we've provided for you here is some choices that you will ultimately make as it relates to getting ready to engage in a strategic planning process. Will there be external or internal stakeholders involved? So there's that part. How long is this process? When do you want this plan to be complete? Average amount of time, 6 months. I'd give it a minimal, and it could be longer. But it depends on who you want to hear from in terms of getting feedback, and we'll get into those details in a minute. But that's about the amount of time that it's going to take. Will you have a committee? I highly encourage having a committee. Highly encourage that. If we create a planning committee, who will be on it? That's that list we just shared with you. Who's going to lead the process for us? We talked about that. Who is actually going to write the plan, like actually put it together? So you're going to go through these 8 steps, and there's information that's going to be generated from that. Someone has to mechanically put that together. In Kenton's case, he did it. In Janelle's case, they had a consultant do it. So you want to kind of know, you may have a consultant, but you also might have a staff person that's mechanically putting it together, and the consultant is guiding that. So, it just depends. The more the consultant does, the more it costs. So that's something to think about too. Will you have a strategic planning retreat? Here, what you want to note is it's very common. It is very common that you will have a retreat that includes board members and staff in some form. Sometimes it's one. I'm working with the organization right now. We're going to have a three part. So it's 3 different retreats, 3 different times. We're taking that list that you saw, and some of that we're building into those retreat spaces. So it just depends on the design that you create. Minimally though, there is a retreat, there's a coming together of the committee, the board and key staff that can help inform what goes on in the plan. And then that last item is will you hire a consultant? In terms of that. So that is in terms of thinking about the startup, Are there any just initial kind of questions here that you have? What is the best way to find the right consultants to help you with this? I would start with the NC Center I would start with the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits and see kind of who are some of the folks that they recommend. You might even check with some of your peers in your community, organizations that have already gone through this experience many times. And oftentimes folks will repeat using the same strategic planning consultant because they're familiar with their organization and they can be helpful in that way. You can ask your peers and or you can seek out the center. In our county, we have a Guilford Nonprofit Consortium, which is a capacity building resource for nonprofits in our county. And so that's a place where you can ask. But word of mouth is great, especially in your local community. Because keep in mind, the consultant that you choose, you want that, it's helpful if that person is familiar with your community because you're developing a plan based on what it is that you're learning and know about community. So did I miss any question, Lisa? I think that was okay. All right, team, I'm gonna continue and then we'll do the breakout. I'm gonna go ahead and continue with preparing to plan. And then we'll go into the breakout. So the next group of information is pages 63 through 67, preparing to plan. And again, we want you to know what you have at your disposal in your workbook, okay? We want you to know what you have at your disposal in your work. So on page 67, we have, are you ready to begin strategic planning? And basically, you want to have more definite leads. Yes, we are, as opposed to not here, because it's challenging to facilitate the process when we're not ready. And so you want to make sure that you're ready to begin that process. So we give you that resource there. Page 65, who should be involved? We've talked about this already, but this is a little more explicit to it goes along with the choices that you have to make. So this informs you in terms of who should be involved. There are decisions, I've been talking about this. There are strategic planning decisions that you're, making here. What kind of processors you're using, who's going to lead the process, who will write the plan. These questions accompany those, the choices handout, and also the are you ready to plan handout. So this is all information to kind of help you in terms of beginning to create and decide how you're going to go about planning to actually do the walk through the strategic planning process. So at this juncture in our work, we've shared quite a bit of information with you. And so we want you to kind of continue to review this, but we also want to know, and we're going to put you in breakouts to actually have some discussion around the usefulness of the information that we have shared under startup and preparing to plan. So the usefulness of this. So if you have not, if you're a part of a nonprofit or you yourself have not participated in a strategic planning process, we want you to begin to kind of take note of, well, how would you go about doing this, utilizing this startup and preparing to plan information that we've shared with you? Or if you have engaged in this process, what might you change or what might you adjust as a result of this startup preparing to plan information? So I want to, team, before we physically go into breakouts, I want to give folks about a minute or two to just sit with their thoughts about how useful is this startup and preparing the plan? How useful is this? So take a minute to think about that. And then when you go into your breakouts, we want you to have a discussion with your peers around, what would be, out of what we've shared so far, what would be the number one piece of information that has, in terms of your going into this process, would you use?
Rebecca has a quick question. On page 63, organizations have a clear vision. Isn't the process a way to get to a new vision? Am I getting this backwards?
It could be either one, either way. Some organizations go into the strategic planning process and their mission and vision is shored up. They don't have a question about it. They're sure that this is what they want to do. And so in the process, that wouldn't be an area they would focus on. However, there are some organizations, when they go in the strategic planning process, they want to revisit the mission. They want to revisit the vision. They want to modify it. They want to change it. And in those cases, yes, you would then go through a process of either changing or enhancing the vision. So we're going to go into breakouts, and what your discussion is around the usefulness of what we have shared with you in startup and in preparing the plan. We're going to go into breakouts now. It is 11:06. So if we could come back at 11:15. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back. One of the things that I want to just remind us of was the icebreaker that we did. And when we did the icebreaker, we had to make a decision in your breakout spaces as a group. We had to make a decision of what we would like first, so that we could bring light to that dark cabin. Strategic planning and working through that process has an element of that's real significant in completing and actually developing the plan and completing the process. We're making decisions as we go along with staff, with board members, with the strategic planning committee, lots of different folks chiming in on what it is that we should be doing as it relates to our work for our nonprofit that is outlined in that plan. And so just like with the exercise, we were all trying to kind of come up with the one device that we were gonna light, first. And so again, this process is in alignment with those principles that you practice in that space. If we could use the chat for this, what was one of the kind of the number one pieces of information that we've shared so far that you all said, this is quite useful? If you would just put that in the chat for us. I'm going to use the chat for your feedback on this one, and we're going to move into the next part of our work. And Lisa or if you can kind of help with what folks are putting in the chat. What did you think was the most useful out of that first kind of piece of information that we talked about?
Committees, assessing if you're ready or not.
Okay.
Strategic planning committee, committee,
Okay.
plan committee.
Okay. Lots of committee.
Mhm.
The process. That committee is very helpful. Because what happens, especially for executive directors and CEOs, what happens is the committee takes ownership of the process. And if you got with the chair of that committee, they're leading the process. And then as an ED or CEO, you're able to work alongside them while they're facilitating that process. So the committee is very, very helpful. And as I mentioned before, definitely helpful if you got a consultant. Is there anything else, Lisa, you wanted to
Readiness,
mention?
Patients, the plan, preparing the plan.
Okay, okay. All right, well, we're gonna add to that information. We're gonna add to that. Now we are looking at needs assessment. We're looking at pages 68 through 81. 68 through 81. This information lifts up some ways to think about engaging in understanding the need related to your mission and your vision and the purpose of your nonprofit. So I want to say that again. The purpose of the needs assessment as a part of the strategic planning process is so that we are looking at and studying the need. So if our nonprofit's focus is tutorial programs for third graders, let's say that's why it was set up, then what we want to better understand as a part of this process, we want to better understand why there's a resource needed in our community for that. I mean, that's what the needs assessment is all about. There are a variety of ways to understand need. One is we can review existing reports that our city has, that our town has, that our county has, as it relates to third graders and them needing a tutorial program. And I'm just using that as an example. And we can do that. We can ourselves, we can ask parents of third graders. We can ask third graders themselves, what is it that makes it difficult or challenging to be able to move from third grade to fourth grade? Why is it that this tutorial program is something that would be helpful or beneficial? So in the strategic planning process, we're trying to better understand the need, what it looks like, what does it feel like in terms of the people that it's impacting. Your nonprofit may have multiple programs and or services that it provides. So if we have a tutorial program, we have a summer camp, we have a senior day program. If you've got 4 or 5 different programs, then your understanding of need is across those areas. And so in the strategic planning process, we either want to review existing information that exists that's about that need, or we want to acquire some primary data from those entities that can inform us and help us better understand the need. So it depends on how you design that part of the process. So the needs assessment. I want to turn your attention to page 52. Remember, in evaluation, we learned about some different methods to gather data. You can use those same types of methods to gather information about need. So you can use that for that purpose as well. So in terms of thinking about needs, so I want to kind of share with you, if we go back to page 68, want to share with you what you have at your disposal. So we've got a description of what a needs assessment is, which is what I shared with you. We've got the needs assessment process worksheet on page 69. Where you see create the plan, also put there, create the assessment. Because here we're creating and we're setting up the assessment that we're going to engage in. Are we going to use a survey, to inquire with people or individuals that can give us feedback? We're going to collect the data, we're going to summarize it, and we're going to disseminate that information if in fact we're going to go out and gather this information ourselves. What we've provided for you on page 71 is if you decide to go the focus group route. We've provided some prompts here for you that you can query that focus group to try to get some insight from them as to what needs are in the community. So we would ask them questions like, what do you think are some of the strengths in our community? What do you think are some of the concerns in our community? What do you value about our community? What would you like to see happen in our community? And you can incorporate information about your agency, as you're engaging in that. We've got some focus group tips for you on page 72. If you decide to do a survey, we've got some considerations that you may want to pay attention to in terms of who are you going to send the survey out to? Now, what I will say to you, what I see a lot of times in this process, the questions that you have in your focus group should align with the questions that you have in your survey. Because remember, you're going to bring all this data together. So you're getting some feedback from the focus group, but you're getting some feedback by way of a survey. And so that's something you want to think about. You may survey your board. You may survey your staff. You may have a focus group with your board. You may have a focus group with your staff. It just depends on what method you want to use in order for you to learn more about what they think and what their perspective is on need. So on page 75, we've got a checklist for your survey. If you decide you want to do a survey. We've got some instructions if you decide that you want volunteers to help you do the survey. We've got a resource there for you for that. And if you are going to have volunteers do the survey, and or staff or consultant, then we want to identify who we want to survey and come up with a mechanism to do that. If you look at page 78, you'll see a sample in terms of a potential needs survey. Notice that this particular survey is trying to get some perspective on a variety of needs. Daycare, prescription drugs, schools, et cetera, medical services. And so there's that. Someone is asking, do we need legal? I didn't catch all of that in terms of the survey.
You have, you need permission or legal wording.
It depends, not my experience is not necessarily the wording for your survey. You may be thinking like maybe a job application or something like that. There are guidelines that we have to follow if we're querying, if folks are applying for a job, there's certain questions that we kind of steer away from. One thought I have to that question is, if you're inquiring with minors, then you're going to have to get permission there. Whenever I facilitate focus groups, I typically have a sheet where I ask participants to sign that they are volunteering to participate in that focus group, and they're not being forced to participate in that focus group. Surveys, a lot of the surveying now happens using SurveyMonkey. Those questions are typically crafted with the Strategic Planning Committee and the ED. And I've not run into a situation where there was some type of legal, legal, I think is what I'm hearing, that there was some legal element to that. Do you have an example? Or is there something that you're thinking of, the person that asked that question?
Yeah, hi, that was me. I just have seen a lot of times when surveys come out that there's this first page of, yes, like what you said, I'm filling this out voluntarily. You know, I understand that my answers will be private or de-identified or not, as the case may be. You know, that sort of thing. Just looking for, you know, whether that is recommended and where could we find that sort of thing, or do we have to go to our legal sort of consult for that?
I don't ever tell anyone not to get legal consultation if you sense that that's something you need to do. So I'm not gonna say that. But what I will say is that that is the disclaimer that typically when you're doing a survey for a nonprofit strategic planning process or community needs assessment, there is those types of disclaimers that we always include. And that just kind of covers the originator of that survey, that yes, this person did this voluntarily. Yes, they know how this information is going to be used. I have not run into a situation where there was some legal case related to anything outside of that. I mean, and what that is research protocol. It's research protocol, really, in terms of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then also it might be that you use kind of a public forum type space to gather feedback and to gather information. For example, I'm a part of I'm on a board where we just had a convening of like 70 people. There's a strategic plan already in existence, and we wanted to get feedback from people at that event in terms of their, how well are we doing, you know, with implementing the plan, to sum it up. And so we had about 10 tables. There was about 5 to 7 people at each table. They had some discussion around that. They recorded their feedback on a worksheet that we provided. That's kind of what that public forum type of example might look like. And then then the needs assessment is to be compiled. So that's needs assessment. Asset mapping, same process. The difference is you're looking at assets, same exact process. And that is pages 82 to 83. 84, we've already reviewed capacity assessment, capacity building. This is probably unique for us in this institute. You may not see this in other strategic planning processes. We highly encourage that as a part of the process of strategic planning, that you better understand your capacity, so that when you're developing those goals and those action steps and objectives, when you're developing all of that, you have capacity of the organization in mind, so that those are realistic. So that's there for you again. As I mentioned before, mission and vision is not always a part of the process. It depends on whether or not you want to make a change to your mission or vision, or maybe the situation is you have a mission, but you don't have a vision. And so you want to craft a vision statement. So mission and vision work isn't always a deep dive part of your process. If you're pleased with that, everybody's good to go with that, you don't want to modify it, then you can move on into your goals of action steps and outcomes. What I will say though, we typically bring it into the space. Your nonprofit, are we good with the mission? Are we good with the vision? If we are, we move on to goals and action steps. So that's how that works. In terms of goal setting and objectives. So here, we're going to do some hands-on work here. And if I could get us team, I want to go ahead and go to slide 20. If you could pull that up for me. Are we having fun yet? Yes, we're having fun. We're doing strategic planning. Okay. Goals, action steps, outcomes. Sometimes you will see different language when it comes to these three parts of a strategic plan. Sometimes you will see different language. You might see objectives in place of the word action steps. You might see focus areas in the place of goals. So the terminology is at your discretion. The way in which I commonly facilitate the process is that we do goal setting and objectives by creating our goal statements, by writing action steps to accompany those goals, and writing outcome statements. So it's like this family of information related to the what, the how, and the why. Goals are my what, action steps is how, and the outcomes are why. So up to this point in the process, we have honed in on the need. We have honed in on assets. We have also honed in on our mission and our vision, or core values, or principles, or there are different ways that your organization or practices may be the way in which your organization kind of creates its purpose or helps to communicate its purpose. So when we get to this point, we are rooted in what our mission and vision is. We understand it. We have been made aware of the needs. We've gathered our data. We've gathered our information that has been presented to us. And now we're getting ready to determine what we want to outline in this plan. We want to identify what we're going to be working on for the next 3 years. We're going to be looking at how we're going to go about achieving the goals in the next 3 years. And we're going to be working on why we're actually going to pursue these goals and why we're going to implement these action steps. And I always say, when you actually look at a strategic plan, the heart of the plan is the what, the how, and the why. The heart of the plan, because this is where we're actually doing the work. This is where the plan is operationalized. And so that's important to think about. Go in your workbook to page 87. So for this particular part of our work, we're using pages 87 through 92. This is what we're using. And I just went over goals, action steps, and outcomes. Goals are the why. Goals are what? What is it that we are going to be working on in this plan? And we write goal statements in order to communicate this. We write goal statements, and those goal statements are very specific. There's a measurable inference in the statement. The goals are realistic, they're attainable, and typically they're going to be achieved within that 3-year time frame if the plan lasts for 3 years. So those are our goals. Our action steps are the how. This is how we're going to achieve the goals. And we are going to focus on that. The outcomes are the why. Outcomes are why we're trying to achieve this goal. And it also is an indication of how we're going to go about achieving the goal. And so we have goal statement, we have outcome statements. And this is kind of the family, if you will, or the heart of the plan. So that's important. In your workbook, you have a sample goal statement on page 88. you have, go back to the previous slide, please. Thank you. You have the action steps on page 89. And you have an outcome statement on page 90. So, and these go together, right? So you have a goal statement here that tells us what we're going to do related to this particular area of work. And we use the NC Center as our place. And then the action steps is how we're going to go about achieving this goal. And then we have the outcome statement. What outcome is it that we're looking for? So the what here is that we wanted to create a capacity building resource. And we wanted to create a community-based capacity building resource in a certain area of the state, which was High Point, Archdale, Jamestown, Trinity, right? So this is our what. When you get over to page 89, this is how we are going to go about achieving that. And so we're going to set up a team. We're going to have some graduate assistants. We're going to, we're going to engage in a lot of different actions in order for us to achieve this goal. And then why are we doing this outcome statement? We're doing this because we wanted to develop and implement a management model for building capacity. And we wanted this resource to be permanent. So our goal is to create this capacity building resource, which is our what. Why are we doing it? Because we need a permanent resource in our state to be able to work with nonprofit organizations. And we wanted a model that we could use. So that's an example there. I'm gonna, if we could stop sharing for a minute. And we're gonna do some work in the open classroom space or the open space here for a minute. If you go to page 91, you have a worksheet, and we're gonna practice writing a what, a how, and a why. And we want to kind of utilize this for in thinking about your nonprofit organization as a whole. Our strategic plan is the organization's plan. So it is the nonprofit organization's plan. And so we want to practice how to do this. We've got, so I'm gonna go just kind of silent, and team, I'm gonna wait on those other two examples. Just hold up on those for just a second. But we're gonna do this work in our space, in the gallery space. So think about what it is that you want to focus on for your nonprofit as an example. Our example was we wanted to create a capacity building resource because we wanted a management model that we could then use to help nonprofits with capacity building. That was our goal, action steps, and outcome. So you're gonna practice and craft your goal, action steps, and outcome with this worksheet. So I'm gonna go silent here for a minute. We've got this organized for you with the goal statement, the action steps, and the outcome statement. And you've got our example to go by. So you can flip back to those pages to kind of help you craft your own. We do have a little helpful sheet on page 92. Those are action words that you can use for each of those if you choose to. The time is 11:42. So at 11:47, I'm going to start back up, and then we can share those other two samples that we have. So we're going to give you about 5 minutes to begin jotting down and filling out your worksheet. And you will need your worksheet filled out in order to do the next part of our work. So. So I'm going to give us another minute and then we'll continue. So another minute. I see you all working, I can see. So I just added another minute to your time. So what we want to do here, we're going to put up for you 2 additional examples. Well, one, because the example in your workbook is also this other example that we have. We over the different cohorts that we've had groups to ask for what a program goal would look like. So what we're going to share with you, and team, you can bring up the sample program goal and the sample goal for the nonprofit as a whole. So what we have here, and we're going to put this in the chat for you. This is not in your workbook. So this is specifically kind of like an organizational goal as it relates to kind of our organization as a whole at the NC Center. This is the one that's in your workbook. The next goal is a program goal. And so this one is in a nonprofit that's implementing a Swim for Life program. And so it's at an academy. And so there's the goal statement. And then there are the action steps to actually achieving that goal. And then the outcome statement here for this program is can we move that up just a little bit? Is the Guilford County Resource and Referral Center will report at least 75% of students enrolled in this program that they will learn to swim within 6 months. They'll pass a proficiency test and will reduce the number of swimming related accidents. So this is for a specific program, which is a little different when you're writing a goal for the entire organization, which is the other example that we provided. And so this is hopefully everybody can grab this out of the chat, and you can add this to your library, add this to your information. So if we could go to slide 21. And in your workbook, if you would go to page 93. So now we're talking about this concept called a SWOT analysis. And the way that we facilitate this in the strategic planning process is once we have that single sheet that you have the goal statement, you have the action steps, you have the outcome statement. Now what we want to do is we want to do an analysis. We want to do a SWOT analysis for each of those goals. And so what we're asking ourselves is, what are the strengths as it relates to our nonprofit, in terms of being able to achieve this goal, implement these action steps, and see this outcome come to pass. So our strengths in being able to do that. Then we have our weaknesses in that same context, and what opportunities does this present, and what threats or barriers are there. If you look at page 94, you will see the strengths, attributes of the organization that are helpful to achieve the goal and objectives that we've outlined, or action steps. The weaknesses are the attributes of the organization that are harmful to achieving or might hinder us from being able to achieve our goal and action step. Our opportunities, any external conditions that are helpful to achieving the objective, and then threats, any external conditions that are harmful to achieving the objective. And so we've got some examples here for you: strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Just some prompts for you to think about. Here's one of my favorite handouts. I know I said that about another handout, but this is one of my favorite too. Page 95. So what we want you to do here is we want you to, that example that you worked on in the worksheet, we want you to now do a SWOT analysis of that goal, those action steps, and the outcome that you drafted. So if we can go back to gallery, that would be great. So again, on page 95 is your worksheet. So you should have, we are taking page 91 that you just filled in, and we are doing the worksheet on page 95 in alignment with that goal, action steps, and outcome. Again, typically this is the heart of the work in terms of the strategic planning process, because this is what's going to be lifted up and is going to be in that plan, in terms of operationalizing the plan. So I'm going to just go silent here, and I'm going to give you, it's 11:52. And so I'm going to give you until 11:57 to begin jotting down some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats related to that example that you developed or started crafting on page 91. And if you have a question, you can unmute. We're paying attention to the chat. If you have a question there, we are paying attention. And I'm gonna answer this question in the chat once we finish. There's a question that's there once we finish with this part of our work. So again, we're gonna come back at 11:57. Give you that time to work. Okay, we have a question in the chat. I'm trying to get back to it. Hold on. And it's hard to move this thing up and down.
I mean, I was saving it for later because it was a long question, but you want me to read it?
Okay, yeah, sure. Thank you, Lisa.
This might be backtracking, so she apologizes. When in an organization with a strong staff, how do you keep committee members, volunteers invested in the process was the first part. And how do you close the information gap between the committee, board members, and the people acting as boots on the ground?
So the purpose of the committee is to address both of those things. The purpose of the committee is for you to create the composition of that committee so that you have key staff. If you can have your board chair that committee, that's always good. But if not, maybe your vice chair or one of the executive committee members to chair the strategic planning committee. Have the key staff as a part of that. And then you are, when we facilitate that process, we are meeting with that strategic planning committee on an ongoing basis throughout the process. And so they are the ambassadors for the strategic planning work. And so in staff meetings, those folks that are on the committee that are on staff, they can chime in as to what's happening. And vice versa on the board, they can chime in. Now, if you have partner organizations and organizations that you collaborate with, they're not necessarily in your day-to-day, but they should be informed in those strategic planning committee meetings. And what I've found since post-COVID, COVID introduced us to Zoom, right? And introduced us to virtual meetings. For something like meeting with strategic planning committees, it works great because those meetings, oftentimes it's challenging to get all those folks on the calendar. But by way of Zoom or a virtual platform, it makes it a lot more doable. Though about an hour meeting, a check-in, this is where we are in the process. This is what we've been able to do. This is how it's going. This is what we need, et cetera, et cetera. So that should help the staff to understand what the overarching process is, who's in charge of the process, et cetera, and establish those boundaries. But it should be a collaborative effort. It's not the staff and them, which is the board. And it's not the board and them, which is the staff. We're working together to do that. Is that helpful? Okay, I don't remember who asked the question, but hopefully that's helpful. So in terms of what we've been able to do, team, can we go to slide 12? So we have had quite a bit of touch points today related to strategic planning. We call them touch points, but this is the process. And this is probably as formal as probably it could possibly get. I don't want to say that our way is the only way. You know, there are different ways to go about it, but there are some general strategic planning focal points. We're unique, I think, and we have this startup and this preparing to plan component. A lot of plans will start processes will start right at needs assessment. And so for this part of our work, we have covered needs assessment, asset mapping, capacity, mission, vision, goal setting and objectives, and SWOT. So we've covered all of those. This is kind of the part 2. We've covered all of these essential parts of the strategic planning process. And so what we're going to do now, team, is we're going to go into our breakout. And when we go into breakout here, what we're going to do is, and we can go back to the gallery now. I just wanted us to be reminded of where we are and what we're working on. When we go into breakout spaces, I want you to do what you did in the previous breakout, but I want you to focus on this part of what we've covered. And what we want you to do is engage in a dialogue around, based on what you've been presented with in this part, what's the most useful to you? Like, what is the most useful? What's the most helpful? And when you go into breakouts this time as well, if you have time, and you're meeting each other for the first time, or maybe you've already been in breakouts together before, share with your colleagues what county you're from and what is your county known for. Like, what are you all known for in your county? Just to add a little spice to that dialogue. So you're sharing what's useful in terms of starting with needs assessment and working up through the SWOT, what's useful to you, your opinion, and then a little bit about the county you're in and what you are known for. So it's 12 o'clock. Team, we're gonna come back at 12:10.
And let us know if anyone, I think a couple of had a problem with their link last time for breakouts. Please let us know so we can monitor. Thanks.
All right. So we'll see you in about 10 minutes. We're coming back at 12:10. So that's 7 minutes. Jennifer and Anna, do you all need any help getting into your breakout spaces?
No, I'll join in a second. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just checking, just checking. Oof. Uh, All right, so welcome back to the gallery. And I'd like to do this the same as we did before. So if you would just pop in the chat, what did you all hear from each other in terms of what might be the most useful going forward as you're beginning to plan and think about strategic planning for your organization? If you would just use the chat for me, that would be great.
SWAT.
Mhm. Good, good, good. Great, great. And what I will say about the SWOT analysis, different consultants sometimes do this differently. Some consultants, when they facilitate the SWOT analysis process, they are doing the SWOT analysis for the entire organization. And then some do the SWOT analysis for each goal, like I had you do it. I typically do it that way so that and this typically happens like at a retreat where you have the staff and the board together. And that way, there's a voice to, and there's staff input in terms of what that, what those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats are based on the goal and not just the organization as a whole. You could very well facilitate the SWOT analysis by goal, but you could also do it in terms of the whole organization. So you could incorporate both in your process if you want to. If you do a capacity assessment, you could also do a SWOT analysis in alignment with the results of that capacity assessment. So that's another way to think about the SWOT analysis. You can apply it in a lot of different ways in that process. So thank you for sharing that. If I could turn your attention to page 96 and 97. So what we provided for you here is an example. You can, it's kind of up to you, kind of what format you use, but here is a kind of a singular page format that incorporates all the pertinent information related to the goal, the outcome, and the action steps. And we also included here who and when. So this is created in Word. So you could recreate this in a Word doc, and you could have a single page for each of your goals, for example. And then there are other ways that you can design the page. And then that way, let's say if you had 6 goals, that means you would have 6 sheets like this that you could kind of build your plan from. But this could start as the core of your plan. And then, like I said, on 97 is the worksheet blank and 96 is filled in. So you can kind of see how that might work. The next part of our work, go with me to page 98, is writing and implementing the plan. So once we have all of this information, because think about it, you've got your needs assessment information, you've got your asset mapping information, you've got, you can do a summary in terms of your feedback, if you did focus groups, if you did surveys, all of that we have in our possession now. So now it's time to build the plan, write it mechanically, put it together. And we saw an example of Janelle's and Kenton's in terms of what that could look like. And so writing and implementing the plan is about the layout, it's about the format, it's about the design. You can add nowadays with technology, as demonstrated with Kenton's plan, you can add some elements to it that we didn't even think about, years ago. And so if you're thinking about doing a presentation, you can take that tangible in your hand plan, and you can do various things with that. You can create a slide deck. You can do a lot of different things with that. And then we're going to implement that plan. Notice in the worksheet, once we have the goals, the outcomes, and the action steps, we indicate who's going to do what and when. And so that's a part of that. Another thing that we're seeing more of in the plans is metrics. So if you go back to page, I just want to show you, if you go back to page 96, you could very well have a metrics column there if you wanted to. You could include metrics. And we're seeing quite a bit of that in terms of that. So I want to point that out. And then on page 99. So once we have the plan written, it's been approved by the board, it's been embraced by the staff, and it is now being implemented. We want to monitor and track progress. I think it was Kenton that said earlier, it is important to build into the process routine monitoring and tracking of progress. This can happen at every staff meeting. This can happen at every board meeting, that we determine how we want to monitor and track and when we want to report out as to how we're doing. So what are we paying attention to? Goal achievement. We're paying attention to any lessons learned. We're paying attention to success. We're paying attention to and looking at data and metrics in terms of the monitoring and tracking progress. So that's important to take into consideration. Page 100 is evaluate and revise the plan. Evaluate and revise the plan. That is important in terms of it being participatory. Again, you might be doing a presentation related to that. The strategic planning committee is involved once you get to the end of that 2 years or 3 years, and you want to kind of regroup and go through this process again. Team, if I could go to slide 22. So again, putting it all together, I'm gonna restate some things that I just shared. Writing and implementing the plan. A table of contents is very, very helpful when you're putting this plan together. And we have a document that we want to share with you that just kind of gives you an example. We're gonna put that link in the chat. But it's the strategic plan table of contents. So we're putting it all together now. We're writing the plan, we're building it, we're creating it, We're using the goal, we're putting the goals in there, we're putting the outcomes in there. We might even be using that work plan template that I just shared with you. But the table of contents is very, very important in terms of building out the plan.
Dr. Palmer, quick question. How often would you recommend doing an evaluation? Yearly, monthly?
For the plan,
Mhm.
I think it's ongoing. You know, when we say evaluation towards the end of the process, it's when that plan is getting ready to expire and it's time to begin thinking about the next plan. However, we should be monitoring and evaluating ongoingly. So we should be building in, I don't know if you want to do it every quarter. I don't know if you want to do it biannually. But you want to be doing that on a regular basis because we don't want to get to the end of 3 years and we've not done a check-in, you know, and that kind of thing. So that's important. So this table of contents, I think we put that link in the chat for you. So you all can kind of take a look at it.
May I ask a question?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You can hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You were saying when we assign out responsibilities to get things accomplished, then those subsections will set up their own teams, maybe draw people in to help them, because then they're going to have to feed back to us.
That
Right.
could be a structure that you use. It could very
Okay.
well be a structure that you use. Some organizations, Carolyn, are going to be limited though, because they don't have a lot of staff. And so
Right.
they're going to be either relying on that executive director to kind of provide some leadership to those areas, or they're going to be leaning on their board members and committee chairs to maybe add some human capacity to that. But if you have staff in place, yes, you could very well have staff take on leadership of paying attention to what's happening in those areas.
Thank you.
Did everybody get the table of contents? Yes. Okay. So in terms of just thinking about what is actually going to be in the strategic plan, as I said before, it's going to be really everything that we have laid out for you in terms of that process. There's going to be an indication of what happened in those areas in that final document that becomes your plan. And so we've provided that sample table of contents with you to use there. Again, you can go to slide 3, team, unless somebody has a question about the table of contents. The monitoring and tracking, like we said before, your goal achievement, challenges, lessons learned, success. And then if you're going to evaluate, you know, in terms of right here, monitoring and tracking the progress, goal achievement, challenges, lessons learned, and success are kind of those focal points for that. And then finally, the evaluation and revision. And again, we don't want to convey the practice of waiting until the 3 years are up. That's not what we're saying when we talk about the evaluation and revision. We can go to the next slide. In terms of the timeline, the report out in a presentation, we do want to bring it to a close and get geared up for the next plan, but we want to be doing that the entire time. We definitely want to be doing that the entire time. So if we could go to slide 12, that would be great.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Mhm.
Having this done, does that help you get grants?
It can be helpful in getting grants. Sometimes your funder will ask you if you have a strategic plan. I know some of the community development block grant applications with city government. They do ask, do you have a strategic plan, and ask you to kind of talk about your plan. They don't ask for a copy per se, but they do ask you if you have one.
Thank you.
Some funders do, some don't. So here is our strategic planning touch points for our session today. And hopefully you've been able to kind of organize your resources that we've shared in a way that you can reference those as you need to going forward. I do want to get just a general kind of idea. Here I go, Lisa. I want to get a general idea of right now you're thinking, right now you're feeling what as it relates to strategic planning. And I want to leave this slide up because this is quite a bit of info. Right now I'm thinking, right now I'm feeling, and Lisa, we've got some chat comments there.
We got informed so far. I think folks are trying to get over their initial shock so they can know what to write.
Oh my goodness. So
Overwhelmed.
baby steps, baby steps.
Mhm.
Take a little small bites at a time.
Scared. Like I'm on the right track. Good.
Oh, good. Thank you all for your feedback. That just helps us to just kind of know just where you are leaving this topic. You know, each of the 6 areas of management that we focus on in this institute could have an entire day, probably could have an entire week of material that we can cover and go over. But we do try to work so that you're walking away with the salient aspects of each of these management functions. I do think it's important related to strategic planning that you understand the process. So if you are going to secure an external resource like a consultant, that you are aware of what your options are. There's a variety of ways to approach this. The end result is to have a credible plan and a credible process that you have experienced. So that's very, very important. I agree. Implementation brings about a whole different reality than what it is that we have on paper. But hopefully the plan itself, once shared and agreed and endorsed and adopted by board and staff, we're on the same page and we can move forward in that way. Our next topic for next week, we can stop sharing, but I do want to, I don't know if we can kind of lend voice to some folks in terms of where they are right now. Okay. But our next topic is fundraising and financial management. Fundraising and financial management. So it too has a wealth of information. And I know Lisa is gonna close us out here, or Rebecca, one of them, but we will have our CFO as a part of our session next week when we get together. So Lisa, I think I'm passing it over to you. Thank you all for your time and attention today.
Right. Hey, family. Hope everybody's okay. Gonna let you go unwind, get some kibbles, as they say. But again, please join us next week for fundraising and evaluation, and we'll have our CFO from the center join us to talk us through that, another heavy topic. But again, I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the weather, and we'll see you next time. And again, we'll be hanging on for a few. So if anyone has any quick questions they want Dr. Palmer to ask or reference, please do.
Yeah, we're going to be on until 12:45. So if you want to stay on with us, we will be here and we can answer any questions that you might have that you didn't want to ask during the session.
I have a quick question about next week. I'm not going to be able to attend. We had already bought plane tickets months ago. Will that recording be available so we could watch it at another time?
Sure will be.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Mhm.
Thanks so much.
You're
Have
welcome.
fun.
Enjoying this.
And Kimberly,
Yep.
if you want to come on to ask a question, it's fine. We had originally said EDs because some of them had some specific ED questions.
Sure, but you can,
Please feel free to join us.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Marie.